Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, and the monk who wrote it in one night. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. The Codex Gigas is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world. It stands 92 centimeters tall, 50 centimeters wide, and 22 centimeters thick. It is made from the prepared skins of approximately 160 donkeys. It weighs 75 kilograms, so heavy that it takes 2 people to carry it. It was created in a single Bohemian monastery in the early 13th century, and modern analysis confirms it was written by exactly one person. Researchers who studied the handwriting, ink consistency, and tool wear patterns across the manuscript's 310 surviving pages concluded that a single scribe produced the entire document, working at the estimated maximum sustainable speed for a medieval copyist, allowing for the preparation of ink, the stretching of vellum, and the application of illumination. The production of the Codex Gigas would have required a minimum of 20 years of continuous daily work, perhaps 30. The legend says it was written in one night. A monk condemned to be walled up alive, so the story goes, promised to create the greatest book in the world before dawn to earn his reprieve, and when his own abilities proved insufficient, he called on the devil for help. On page 290 of the manuscript, there is a full-page portrait of the devil, and the monk's name, like so much else about this book, is unknown. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The official story of technological progress follows a reassuring arc: stone tools giving way to bronze, bronze to iron, iron to steel, and finally, the Industrial Revolution catapulting humanity into the modern age. In this narrative, each generation inherits a slightly more sophisticated toolkit than the last, and no knowledge is ever truly lost. It is a comfortable story. It is also, in key respects, demonstrably false. History is littered with technological achievements that appeared centuries before their supposed invention, vanished after the cultures that created them collapsed, and were reinvented, often with great difficulty, by later civilizations who had no idea the knowledge had ever existed. Roman concrete was stronger and more durable than most modern concrete, and was not matched again until the 21st century. Greek fire, the incendiary weapon that protected the Byzantine Empire for centuries, has never been fully reproduced. Damascus steel, capable of holding an edge that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate, disappeared with the craftsmen who made it. These are not myths. They are documented historical losses of genuine technical knowledge. When we encounter an object from the ancient world that should not exist, a battery from Baghdad dated to the Parthian era, a computing mechanism salvaged from an ancient shipwreck, a map showing geographical features that were not officially discovered for another millennium, the temptation is to dismiss it as misidentified or misstated. That dismissal is sometimes warranted. But when such objects accumulate, when the pattern becomes too consistent to ignore, the honest response is to ask whether our model of ancient capability is simply wrong. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, and the monk who wrote it in one night is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Codex Gigas was created in the early 13th century, with scholars placing its production between approximately 1204 and 1230 AD at the Benedictine monastery of Podlages in Bohemia, now the Czech Republic. It is 92 centimeters tall, 50 centimeters wide, and 22 centimeters thick, with 310 surviving vellum pages and an estimated 74 pages that were removed at an unknown point in the manuscript's history. It weighs approximately 75 kilograms. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly, it is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the manuscript's vellum, prepared animal skin, is estimated to derive from approximately 160 donkeys or calves, based on the total surface area of the pages. The preparation of vellum at this scale, before a single word was written, would have required significant resources and the sustained effort of skilled craftsmen over a considerable period. This investment in preparation alone indicates the project was planned and resourced at an institutional level. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Codex Gigas contains a complete Latin Vulgate Bible, Jerome's 4th century translation, along with Flavius Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews and Jewish War, Isidore of Seville's Etymology, a Chronicle of Bohemia, medical texts, and various shorter works including encyclopedic lists, calendars, and a necrology. The diversity of content suggests the manuscript was intended as a comprehensive reference library, a single volume containing everything a monastery might need. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Swedish army captured the Codex Gigas in 1648 during the 30 Years' War, removing it from the library of Rudolf Roman II in Prague as war booty, along with hundreds of other cultural treasures. It was transported to Stockholm and presented to Queen Christina of Sweden. It has been held at the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm ever since, where it remains the library's most famous and carefully preserved object. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of a full-page illumination of the devil appears on page 290 of the manuscript, opposite a depiction of the heavenly city. The devil is shown in full figure, a red and green figure with clawed hands and feet, set against a black background, and is considerably larger in scale than any other illustration in the manuscript. The deliberate prominence of this image within a religious text produced in a monastery has never been satisfactorily explained by scholars of medieval illumination. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: detailed handwriting analysis conducted by Czech paleographer Pavel Spunar and confirmed by subsequent researchers established that the entire Codex Gigas was written by a single hand. The letter forms, spacing, pressure patterns, and stylistic habits remain consistent across all sections of the manuscript over what must have been decades of production. The uniformity rules out collaborative scriptorium work and confirms one person wrote every word of the largest medieval book known to survive. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, and the monk who wrote it in one night. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that a single monk wrote the entire Codex Gigas over a period of approximately 20 to 30 years, the conclusion of scientific analysis. Handwriting uniformity, ink chemistry consistent with the same source materials over time, and tool wear patterns all support continuous production by one individual. Who that individual was remains unknown. The 74 missing pages, removed at an unidentified point, may have contained monastic records that could have identified the scribe. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that a monk condemned to be walled up alive as punishment for breaking his monastic vows promised to create the greatest book in the world in a single night to earn his life. Unable to complete it alone before dawn, he summoned the devil, who finished the manuscript in exchange for the monk's soul. The legend names the monk Herman the Recluse. No historical record identifies Herman the Recluse or connects this name to the monastery of Podlages. The legend is first documented centuries after the manuscript's creation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Codex Gigas was produced by a scriptorium working collaboratively, with multiple scribes trained to imitate a single house style, a practice used in some medieval workshops to produce consistent-looking manuscripts. This hypothesis has been examined and rejected by specialists. Modern forensic handwriting analysis distinguishes individual scribes even when they attempt to match a style, and the codex shows none of the micro-variation that collaborative production would introduce. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, and the monk who wrote it in one night does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes detailed forensic handwriting analysis confirms a single author throughout the manuscript. Spanar's analysis, an independent confirmation by handwriting specialists commissioned by the National Library of Sweden, identified consistent individual characteristics, including the specific angle of pen strokes, the formation of individual letters, and the spacing habits of the scribe that remain constant across all sections, from the biblical text to the chronicle to the medical entries. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented ink consistency studies and analysis of tool where patterns on the vellum surfaces are consistent with one person working over a period of decades rather than a single intense session. The ink shows variation consistent with different batches prepared at different times over a long production period. Chromatic analysis of the pigments used in illuminations confirms they are consistent with 13th century monastic materials from the Bohemian region. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the 74 pages removed from the codex at an unknown date, identifiable from the binding structure and missing foliation, represent the manuscript's greatest documentary gap. Based on their position within the manuscript sequence, some researchers have proposed they contain the monastic records of Pardlages, which would have included information about the scriptorium and its inhabitants. Their removal may have been deliberate. Their whereabouts are unknown. No inventory of the manuscript from before their removal has been found. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, and the monk who wrote it in one night. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The National Library of Sweden has digitized the complete Codex Gigas and made high-resolution images of every page freely available online. One of the most significant open-access contributions to medieval studies of the past 2 decades. Researchers worldwide can now examine the manuscript in detail without traveling to Stockholm. Scientific analysis continues. The medical texts have been studied by Czech historians of medicine, the Chronicle section by Bohemian historians, and the Illumination program by art historians of medieval manuscript production. The identity of the scribe remains unknown. The 74 missing pages remain unlocated. The Codex Gigas is the world's largest surviving medieval manuscript, produced by one anonymous person over a generation of daily labor, and it contains a full-page portrait of the devil that no one has ever adequately explained. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, and the monk who wrote it in one night, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Codex Gigas ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.